Welcome to episode 2. Alright, so like I said, 2 days worth of content per one video. So today's Saturday, tomorrow's Sunday, and this video will drop Monday. So you won't be behind. But so in the search for parts of what we need and what we don't need, I'm looking around the shop and seeing what's stashed around and what's stashed where. And fortunately, up here, right down there in that corner, we had 2 stock intercoolers, both stock intercoolers for the Z, and there's also a bunch of what is clearly factory piping. So I'll be able to piece that puzzle together, and that's one less thing that we got to find. Excellent, right? That box I mentioned earlier, I already sifted through it and I laid everything out. Those are intercoolers from upstairs. So there's, okay, so the way ZX is set up, it seems there's a main harness and a sub harness, and there's both there. And then whatever this little harness is right here was in there, but it's cut. And then the factory ECU has this thing on it. It's like a little adjuster knob. I don't know what that's for. Gotta figure that one out. And then some covers and other miscellaneous things. And then all the stuff in here is not junk, but it's not really much usable either. But that's okay. Today we're actually going to work on the car and get something done, and we're gonna make progress. We're gonna attach some things, we're gonna twist some things, turn some things, install some things. Things are gonna be done. But like I said, the situations like this, best way is to pick a corner and work your way around until you get back to where you started, and then you'll be complete. So what seems like it would be easiest to start in the battery corner, and then we're just going to work our way all the way around until we get back here. So first things first, we clearly need some battery terminals. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a list, and we're going to check it twice, and we'll work our way through, and at the end of it, I should have at least somewhat of a parts list. The eval is done. From what I can see now anyway. It seems, I don't want to say it's not that bad, because I'm going to jinx it if I say that. But the list isn't bad. You're not going to be able to read all that. Maybe if you pause it, you can. The list isn't like bad. You know, it's a little bit long, but a lot of the stuff in it is more down the line stuff. Like, there's a lot of things that need addressing, but it's not anything that's pertinent right now to get us to summer vibes. So I'll bring that up later, and that'll be something for post summer vibes videos, I'm sure, because once this part of the build series is done, the next part is basically rehabilitation, is what I'm gonna call it anyway. Going from sitting for so long, all the bushings and all the rubber and basically just a lot of things on this car just didn't fare well. Florida's really hot, as we all know. The sun bakes things. Just the weather just kind of destroyed a lot of the rubber stuff under here, and a few other things, and it's just weathered. So just stuff that needs attention. So if we start with the absolute easiest thing first, we see here this power steering line is not usable, unfortunately. So super easy step one, right? We'll take that line out, and we'll more than likely just replace it with another OEM line if we can find one. I'm sure that they're not that difficult to find. I mean, worst case, we'll just make another one. It's just a power steering line, it's not difficult. Alright, so getting that hose out was pretty easy. It seems to be a common trend here that in this configuration, this car is pretty easy to work on, which is nice. Really nice. But something I shouldn't get used to, I guess. So next thing is these water lines. So on the back of the motor here, turbo, and then there's the harness, and then there's some lines back here. So what I did, I took a piece of stainless hose, because I think that's kind of the best to use back here. Took a piece of stainless hose and I already slipped it on to what is the either the turbo feed or the return line. Probably the return, but anyway, I already slipped the hose on there, and I'm gonna measure it out, chop it, because it goes right there on that. If we can take a moment and talk about clamps. So it's completely acceptable and completely legal to use that hose like that and clamp it, right? The types of clamps that I use on all my cars and all my builds are these. These are stainless steel, the camera would focus, there you go. These are stainless steel band clamps, non-perforated with rolled edges. See that roll? These clamps are amazing. Yeah, they're a little expensive, but when it comes to long-term things like installing clamps on stuff, you don't want cheap worm clamps. You want nice ones. If that's a thing, a nice worm clamp. But these are the ones I use. They're very heavy, they're nice, they're stainless, and they have a rolled edge so they don't actually dig into whatever you install them on. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut that line, install these clamps on both ends, and that'll be the first water line for the back of the turbo. Shout out Lowball Zach. Now I'm sure there are plenty of people out there that'll disagree, but there is no one right way to cut a stainless hose. There's plenty of methods out there using band saws, circular saws. If you take a really sharp chisel and hit it with a hammer, boom, you can chop it up real clean. My preferred method for stainless and nylon braided hose is a saw. And I do it that way for two reasons. One, it gives you a nice clean cut, relatively speaking anyway. It's quick, and it's not very destructive. One of the really nice things about not having a transmission on the other side of this or anything is the motor's just sitting in here. So, for example, like with this water hose, instead of reaching my hand in here and fighting and struggling and doing all sorts of crazy stuff, all I have to do is grab the motor back here and do one of these, and look at all that space, and I can just do this, and that's it. It's that easy. Alright, so real easy, real simple install of a water line. It don't look like much, but this signifies the first step to a running car again. One water line. We got I think 3 more for the turbo. So we're rocking. And I use stainless for the back of the motor there. 1, because of the heat, and 2, because of reliability. Although under that stainless braid is just a regular rubber hose, that braid provides more protection than nothing. So that's the way I look at it. Ideally, it would be a hose with the heat sheath around it, but of course we're, cost conscientious here. There's 2, and here's 3. And it runs all the way to right there. So, pro tip, super secret technique, if you don't already know about it. So if you look here, there's a zip tie right there. But there's also a zip tie right here. So what this does is it keeps these 2 hoses, the stainless one and the nylon one, it keeps them from rubbing on each other, from chafing, which is a catastrophic thing that could happen. This is a technique that's used on aircraft, and the technical term for it is maintaining positive separation. And the only point of it is to keep the 2 lines from chafing on each other and ultimately rubbing a hole in each other, and then failure. Unfortunately, I'm out of hose. I was able to make 1, 2, 3 lines out of it. There's 1 more turbo line for the driver's side turbo that needs to be made. but I gotta order more hose for that. Next thing we can done is we can actually install coil packs. So there's like 20 coil packs to choose from with this motor. I don't know why there are so many, but there's a lot of them for this motor. I'm gonna check out the service manual and see what the test is for them, so I can just use the 6 best of all the ones that are available. So slight exaggeration, there's actually only 10 of them. So we got 10 coil packs to choose from. I'm gonna test them all individually, write down the results, and see which 6 are the best, and then use those. And then the remaining 4 are just spares. Just a side note, real quick. Something said for me to just pull these spark plugs out, take a look at them. This motor was supposed to have been overhauled. So the assumption can be made that the spark plugs in there are new, but for whatever reason, I just decided to pull one out, and it's kind of funny. It's not, but it's also very hilarious. Look. What does that look like? Does that look like a brand new spark plug to you? I don't think I need to say much. I think the evidence speaks for itself. One funny thing, also another funny thing to note. 6 spark plugs, 5 of them were tight. This one here was not. As soon as I put the ratchet in there, I went to go break it loose and it just spun. It wasn't even tight, so. Alright, so when ohming out anything, especially when it's something like this and you're looking for a specific range, what you want to do, set your multimeter to ohms, and you touch the probes together, and the number you get there is the internal resistance of the multimeter. Whatever number you get when you probe whatever it is you're about to probe, you add, or subtract, actually, you subtract that number. So in my case, 0.2. Most of them are pretty good, so the first 6, fortunately, all within spec. And also keep in mind, this number is minus 0.2 for the internal resistance of the multimeter. So 0.7 is the upper limit, minus 0.2. That puts us at 6s, and then the rest of them, I wouldn't even bother with these, just because. So, our first 6 are good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These guys are good, and these 4 are dookie. Well, not a great deal was done today actually on the car. Off camera, I got everything done parts-wise as far as what's needed, parts ordered, parts sourced, everything. I got a bunch of stuff coming in the mail right now. It's insane. It's gonna be Christmas in about a week when all this stuff gets here. The background stuff is all done. The not exciting stuff, I can't film me sitting on the computer clicking a mouse, but it took a few hours to find everything and source everything, get all the part numbers right, and basically just find everything. So in that sense, today was a really good day. We got a few small things done on the motor, the water lines and everything else, but today was a pretty good day. I think it was anyway. I spent more time inside in the AC than I did out here in this death box. I'm gonna split these videos up, so 2 days per video. So today's Saturday, tomorrow's Sunday, and we're gonna get a lot more done actually on the chassis. We're gonna build up the intake manifold. I gotta scrounge parts from this one and put it on that one, and also clean stuff up and do all sorts of other stuff. But we're gonna build up the intake manifold tomorrow, along with whatever else makes sense. So yeah, welcome to day 2 of Kevin Z. So it is on and off raining right now, so the audio is gonna get kind of funny. What we're gonna do today, we're going to do fuel stuff. So, oh, and there's the rain. So one of the past things about this car, the fuel tank in here at one point was rusted and it was replaced. It was, the rusty fuel pump stuff was still put back in. And then once that happened, the car of course sat for another year and there's not much gas in this tank. So absolutely we need to open it up and see what it looks like in there to make sure that we don't have that problem a second time. And also to make sure that the fuel pump is not rusted over and the socket is, all that stuff. So we'll start with that. But fortunately for the Z32s, fuel pump can be accessed through the trunk. You don't gotta drop the tank to do it, like how you have to do on some other cars. So fortunately, this won't be too difficult. But looking at it, what do you think this arrow here means? So I've never seen the pump assembly for a Z32 before, but this is a really strange setup. I mean, as you can see here, whoever installed this didn't put any hardware through this clamp, so it's just kind of like that. Unless it fell off in the tank. Whatever. Oh, wow. Yeah, this isn't even installed right. Look at that. There's supposed to be hardware through here, and there isn't. So the pump is just kind of like doing this. Well, it's not terrible, but... and it's not rusted, which is what we were going to look for. So this isn't bad. Just a little bit of messing around with this hanger to make it proper again. So this is good news. This is exactly what we wanted to see. And fortunately, that tank is full of gas, like all the way to the top. So that is excellent. That means, so just like in airplanes, when you store an airplane or anything like that, you fill the tanks all the way up, and that keeps condensation and everything else out. Keeps the tanks clean. I'm going to clean up this hanger a little bit and make it better. I already took these little brackets off and put them on the wire wheel. Can't exactly get in there, but this is definitely much better than they were. Upon closer inspection, the thermistor, this wire broke off of it. I should be able to just solder this back on though. It looks pretty basic. And then the rest of it is just in kind of rough shape. So I'll hit it with the wire wheel and just clean it up a little bit, make it more presentable. Alright, a little bit of time with the wire wheel, a wire brush, some penetrating oil. It's not great, but it's definitely better than it was. Only thing left with this is to fix this wire, put it back on the thermistor, and then should be able to reassemble the hanger. Just put all this stuff back together. I gotta figure out what sort of hardware runs through here. It might just be a small nut and bolt. We'll see if I can find something to go in there. Good thing we did this. Little things like this makes all the difference. Also, we're gonna be replacing the fuel lines back there by the tank with all new stuff, because in addition to all of the bushings and everything on this car being rotted out, those hoses are as well. So there are some sediments in the tank, unfortunately. I don't have anything to extract it with, honestly, outside of draining the tank, which I'm more than likely gonna have to do anyway because this gas is more than a year old. But once I drain it out, I'll go back in there and I'll suck all that, all the sediments and debris and everything else from out of there. And then we're gonna replace this hose and this hose here with brand new nylon braided hose. All the hose that's going onto this car is Russell Pro Classic 2 hose. So it's good for fuel, good for oil, good for coolant, good for everything. And it's really nice stuff. This right here, all this. It's the same exact hose you would make an AN line out of. It's just instead of putting an AN fitting on the end of it, we're putting a clamp. We'll come back to the fuel hanger assembly. I'll knock out this solder. It's just one solder of that wire there. But next thing, we're gonna do this wire harness here. This is the charge harness. This is what attaches to the alternator and the starter. We can get that routed because it's not in there. It's supposed to lay somewhere this way, I think. We'll get that in. That's gonna be the next thing. Baby steps. Charge harness is in. Not knowing the factory routing for all of this stuff makes it a little bit difficult to install, but I just went with logic and I routed it the way I did. The alternator has to come back out because I want to go get it tested, load tested, to make sure that it's even still good. But it's hung, at least. This is the way I routed it. So I removed the neck for the sprayer bottle. It's a useless component, honestly, it is. So I removed that and I was able to push the wires more this way. So when I go to put the intercooler piping on, there's space here for that to go on with the coupler and everything, because this doesn't move very much at all. So I left some space for that. So I routed it on the outside of the power steering hard line, and then zip tied it right here so that it's secure and it doesn't go nowhere. I routed it here. You're not gonna be able to see it, but there's a little heat shield thing right under the turbo, and I routed the harness in between a small gap between the chassis and the heat shield, so it routes under the turbo and away from it, so that when it goes to the starter, it's not sitting directly under the turbo. See this gap right here? That's where I put it. So there's the motor mount, and this is that little heat shield I was talking about. It's right here in this gap. It moves freely too, so it's not like binding or anything. But so part of the charge harness is this plug here. This is actually for oil pressure. Now here on this assembly where the oil filter goes, this port right here is where the oil pressure sender is supposed to be. But for whatever reason, it's right there. It might be a twin turbo issue, or not an issue, but a twin turbo thing for this motor for it to be on that side. So just got to move it from there to there. The only issue is the oil return. So you can see it's pretty tight here in this space. Maybe like a finger and a half worth of space. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a 90-degree fitting to come down like that, so that way I can just plug it in like this, because there's a lot more space between what will be the oil filter and then the sensor. So I'll just plug it in that way. I just got the sensor off, and check that out. Solid black glob of whatever. So that's the clearance with the sensor. It's actually just fine. I might not need a 90-degree at all. I only wanted the 90 for the plug, but it looks like it actually might just be, no, it's actually perfectly fine. Never mind. No need to get the 90. It's there is clearance between it and the return line. Very little, but there is clearance. And with the return line being bolted to the turbo and this being solid mount, they'll never touch. So perfectly acceptable. But now I just need to get a plug for that there, which is no problem at all. So in the process of figuring out what these plugs and everything here are for, I found that these two here go to the trans, and this one here goes to the starter. But look at that. Sliced. And what's crazy about it is that this harness here terminates at a component, and on the back here at a component. So the way this works is we either have to replace the components to get the rest of this harness, or I'm going to have to go through the wiring diagram and one wire at a time repair this so that I can attach it to the harness that's currently in the car. That sucks, but we'll have to deal with that basically now. I'll figure that out a little later tonight. Moving on though, I looked over the vacuum diagram and looked at this here. So there's a lot more that went to this. Apparently this was for the EGR, and there's this line, there's another little one on here somewhere, but they're all cut for the EGR delete, but they're cut really poorly. So we're gonna take this whole line off and chop those off entirely and make this a lot better. Alright, cool. So this is out. I am eternally grateful at how easy things are when the motor is just not attached to anything. You just lean the whole thing forward and then you could just pull stuff out. It's crazy. So we're gonna cut off this top pipe here, this one, and this lower one here, and then we're gonna grind this down and make it nice and smooth and beautiful. Alright, much better. Look at that. So the little tabs are still on there, and because this is a vacuum line, if I try to remove them or I grind them down too much, then it makes for a big hole. So that's really about as good as it's gonna get, which is better than it was. So we'll reinstall this and call that good. The back of the motor is done. So the only thing left back here is this water line, which is going to run, it's going to go from here to here. And once I get, I already ordered the line. Once I get it, then I can make that. The other thing back here is this vacuum line. It's a really weird step. So it goes from this little one to this fat one. I'm guessing that there's probably an OEM line that goes there or something or whatever, so I'll figure that one out. But once that's done, I'll just need bolts so I can attach the torque converter to the flex plate, because there weren't any and there aren't any. So I'm gonna go ahead and just use an OEM bolt for that. Same thing with the drive shaft. I ordered OEM hardware for the drive shaft to the diff. I wouldn't trust anything else. Once I get all that hardware, then the drive shaft can go in, the trans can go in, the downpipes can go on, the exhaust can go on, and then I have to make a little bracket that attaches the shifter to the lever that attaches to the thing. I showed you already, it's bent, it's a U shape, but whatever little bracket that's supposed to be on there is not there and it's gone, so I gotta make it, and that's pretty easy, right? Another small issue I ran into is this right here. There's supposed to be one of these here, and there's nothing. So I'm either gonna have to try to find one of these, which I'm about 1000% confident you cannot buy this single piece separately. So we might have to end up actually having to tap this hole to accept a fitting so that I can run the, it's all part of the PCV system, so I'm probably gonna have to do that in order to get the a fitting in there. And that'll be it for the back of the motor. So once the exhaust is on, ultimately, once the exhaust is on, that's like 50% right there, because everything under the car is then done at that point. And the only thing that's going to be left is finishing everything here in the engine bay. So that just leaves us with power steering, which is on the way, clutch fan, which we have here. The one that was in the car is destroyed, and if I put this on, it will explode. There are cracks all the way around this thing. So I'm just going to transfer over the thing here into this fan, which is good. They're not cracked. So that'll be good for that. Hoses are on the way. A radiator is on the way. The a new pressure line is on the way. A factory oil cooler is on the way, so that'll go there. I still got to figure out how to mount these intercoolers. I mocked them up just a little bit, and these hoses here, which are really weird, it goes from here right to the other side. Like, it's just a U-shaped hose. It doesn't actually do anything. So that might have to get deleted. I'll have to check to see how that's actually supposed to route. Then gotta get the intercoolers on, and then the whole puzzle and maze of factory intercooler piping needs to be solved. Same thing with the intakes. Then that's going to lead us into wiring. I'm pretty sure that this wire harness is going to be good to plug into everything it needs to plug into, but I'm not entirely sure. From the looks of it, NA to turbo, pretty sure it's all about the same. There's not anything really extra that I saw. No, like extra solenoids or anything like that needs plugging into. So I would imagine that the harnesses would be the same as well. But I guess we'll figure that out when we get there. And I think I said I was going to build up this manifold today. But I'm actually going to save that for the next episode. We'll walk through that on the next episode, because I'm missing parts for it, and they're all on the sheet to be ordered. So by the time we get to that, all of that should be here. So we'll deal with that. But yeah, we're just rocking along. It looked like a lot of work at first, and it is, but it's not really anything complicated, fortunately. So we're jamming through this, man. It's looking really good, like we're gonna make it to summer vibes. The real trick is gonna be once everything is together and that starter turns for the first time, what's gonna happen? We can only have faith that this motor is good because we're relying on whoever assembled it, whoever overhauled it, and basically whoever installed it. So hopefully it works out, because everything I'm doing, I hope, is not for nothing. So last thing we're gonna do for this episode is we're gonna take the fuel rail out, and we are going to replace this line here. There is a kit, Z1 Motorsports makes a kit, a fuel line kit for these cars, and fortunately that I have that kit. So we're gonna replace that fuel line because that fuel line's part of the kit, and get all these injectors actually like installed. There are actual nice caps here that go on top of the injectors. So we'll get those installed, and we'll have to grease these up a little bit because they're all kind of dry. There is grease on it, but it's dried out grease. You can kind of see it a little bit. So we'll get that installed, and we'll call it a wrap for this video. So you should be watching this on a Monday. The next video is supposed to drop on Wednesday. So Wednesday, we're gonna do a whole bunch. By Wednesday, I should have some parts in at least. Definitely gonna build up the intake manifold. We're gonna install the fuel pump hanger back in, and then close up the fuel tank and be done with that. I may or may not have more fuel line by then. I might not. If we do, then we'll replace the fuel lines back there too. And basically just whatever comes in the mail is what I'll do for that. But it would be nice to be on hold for parts. It also wouldn't be, but it would be kind of nice to be on hold for parts, because that means that we're moving at a really good pace. So fuel rails, I already cleaned up one of them. You can see the difference. It's much better than it's much better than what it was. These are raw steel or aluminum, whatever they're made of, so they will oxidize again, but it'll oxidize uniformly, which is better than what this is. So we're gonna do the other one, get these injectors installed, and put it back in. Also, this is why we replace hoses. This hose here was plastic. As soon as I went to go take it off, it exploded into a million pieces. This side wasn't, which is odd that it only did that on one side, but this is why we replace these hoses. The injectors are backwards. I didn't put the fuel line on. It's got to come back out anyway. I need to take it to get I need to size up the hardware because I don't have any of this, so it's all got to come back out anyway. It's just in just to be somewhere. So we'll call that a wrap for episode 2. Episode 3 will be what I said earlier. It's looking good. Looks like we're gonna make it. I'm saying that now and it's so soon, but hopefully I don't jinx it. I'm just very optimistic. If you guys are enjoying this so far, like, comment, subscribe, share the videos, watch my other videos, do all that normal YouTube stuff. I do read every comment, like I said. If you don't get a thumbs up or a heart or something, you will get a response. I read it all, and I will continue to do that forever. So, thanks for watching. Thanks for making it to the end. I know these videos are long, but sometimes the content is cool, sometimes it's not. Just depends on what I got going on, but this is maintenance. This is it. It's not always turbos and flames and dyno pulls, you know? A lot of times it's just the boring stuff, but this is what it is. All right, next time.